welcome to Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast about companies and people making society and our economy more sustainable and environmentally responsible. You know, the quest to reduce our environmental impact starts in our kitchens. According to the United Nations, 34% of human CO2 emissions each year are produced by growing, processing, and shipping food. But the good news is that the share of food-related emissions has actually declined from 44% to 34% since 1990. This shows that significant progress is possible by changing our eating habits and the way we grow, harvest, and ship food. Our guest today is Wild Planet Foods founder and CEO Bill Carvalho. His company sources pole and line-caught fish, which eliminates bycatch. Those are the species caught in nets and tossed overboard because it was not what the fishing vessel wanted to catch and sell. Bycatch accounts for about 22% of the fish caught by net fishermen, according to Oceana, a nonprofit working to protect the world's oceans. In addition to line and pole-caught tuna, which is the center of its product offerings, Wild Planet also focuses on smaller species such as sardines, mackerels, and anchovies in an effort to protect the ocean food chain. While preparing for this show, I tried a variety of Wild Planet fish and canned pasta, bean, and vegetable tuna salads that are convenient for lunch or just after work if you need a snack. The salads come in fully recyclable packaging. And since the topic of sustainable seafood is more important than ever as crops fail in some regions due to climate change, we wanted to explore what Wild Planet has to offer. You can learn more about Wild Planet at wildplanetfoods.com. Wild Planet Foods is all one word, no dash, no space, wildplanetfoods.com. Welcome to the show, Bill. How are you today?
I'm great, Mitch. Thank you so much for your interest in our product line and our vision.
Well, it was tasty, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us about why it's so tasty and how it's better for the planet. The story of your founding revolved around your insight that wild fisheries are healthier than industrial fishing approaches that are typically used. How can a company engage with and extract resources from the ocean while preserving its wildness and natural character?
Right. Well, Mitch, that really revolves around whether a practice is selective and has the ability to target the right fish of the right species and of the right size. And while even the big industrial fisheries are targeting wild fish, they do so quite indiscriminately and non-selectively. The pole and line method of catching tuna catches just tuna of a certain size and doesn't really catch anything else. And if anything else is caught, it usually becomes dinner for the crew. So there's full utilization of everything that's caught and nothing is wasted.
Well, and that use the whole thing approach is absolutely essential to the way that to reducing our economy's wastefulness. Where does your fish come from? Tell us about the fisheries you work with and what are these fishing vessels like?
Yes, we started out working with U.S. vessels along the coast of California, Oregon, and Washington. And as we buy all of the tuna we can from those vessels, and we have expanded since then to other fisheries that practice pole and line, specifically in Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, Cape Verde, and all those are fleets that catch tuna exactly the same way with that selective one-by-one pole and line method.
So these are independent fishing vessels that are selling to you?
They are. They're independent vessels. They range in size from something like 50 feet long to 100 feet long. They're just a medium-sized vessel. They tend to be family-owned. They're family enterprises that fish in their home port, go out and come back in, delivering back to their own community.
And do you do anything to monitor the practices on your suppliers' boats?
You know, it would be wonderful, Mitch, if I could say, oh, yes, we know exactly what's happening on those boats, but that would not be really truthful. I'm expecting that your question is going to the real question of are there labor abuses? Are there human rights abuses aboard the vessels that sell us fish?
As well as just whether or not they do actually use line and pole approaches.
Oh, right. Sure. Well, when it comes to monitoring for that, we do know that these vessels are number one, they're really too small to engage in the large purse seine fishery abuses that occur at sea. Their decks are such, and their gear aboard is such that they really are just pull and line fishing. They can't go out there and secretly swap gear because they just don't have the space or the equipment for that.
Well, and I would hope that as family fishermen, they aren't abusing their families on board the vessel. But
well, exactly.
Can you talk a little about how do you look for labor protection?
Right. Well, really, that has to do with deciding whether these vessels are being monitored and inspected and required to be compliant with rigorous labor laws. And when these vessels exit their home port in their first world country, in the case of most of those countries I mentioned, Japan and United States, South Africa, New Zealand, there are rigorous labor laws that protect not just citizens, but also guest workers in those countries. And when those vessels go out to sea, come back in, they have to be compliant with the labor laws of those countries, and they're subject to inspection, and there is opportunity for grievance, really grievance reporting on the part of anyone there on the boat that wants to say, hey, this guy's breaking the law. By contrast, vessels that are distant water fleet vessels that can fish in international waters sometimes can stay out for 2 years, and they discharge to what's called a transshipment carrier vessel that brings fuel, groceries, and unloads the vessel and takes the fish, gives them groceries, and that boat never has to come into an area where there can be enforcement or grievance access. And so all of our boats come from that really squeaky clean first country legal practice. And so we feel very good that our fish is really being properly monitored and in compliance with the highest laws possible.
So the other thing I wanted to ask about is, do you have limits on how many of the large species that they can catch? Are you helping to manage these fisheries by setting some ceilings in catch size?
Excellent question, Mitch. Actually, that would be the intuitive question. And the real question is do we limit their ability to take the tiny babies? Because those are the ones that really need to grow up and escape capture to recruit to the brood class, the breeding class, and then repopulate. The pull and line method itself is catching fish right at the very surface. The lines are only about 20 feet long at the most. And so you can't catch deep dwelling fish. And in tuna happen to have a biological pattern that the younger fish migrate and feed at the surface on balls of anchovies, sardines, and whatnot all around the world. And then when they get to be about 6 years old, those fish then sink. They live in deep water, and they live in a different part of the ocean, and they go into the breeding class, and they cannot be caught on the surface. So we never catch a fish that has made it to the recruiting and the breeding class.
Now, the other type of fish that you catch are the smaller fish, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, and the like. And there's a video on your site where you visited the Lewis family, and they do small-scale gill netting, they were literally in the surf. Can you tell us how that works, and how does that protect against too much bycatch?
Right. Well, that's up in Bristol Bay in Alaska, and the Lewis family goes there for about 3 weeks a year during the season. And it's a brother and two sisters, and you ask, how does it work? It works really hard. It's a lot of hard work. They set out what's called a set net. And so they're on shore, and they anchor it on shore, and they go out into the river with a small boat, and they set a net perpendicular to the shore, and that gill net will then catch sockeye salmon that are migrating up the river. Of course, they're only going out about 5% of the river. So the rest of the fish that are out in the center of the river just swim by, and they go up to spawn, and they end up having to deal with those bears that we see up at up at those falls. But this gill net method is just squeaky clean. It only catches the sockeye salmon, and they tend that net and bring those fish in every hour. And the buyer that buys that fish and cans it for us is actually on site with ice and a truck, a 4-wheel drive truck right on the beach to take that salmon then back to the plant.
Now, how do you catch the small species then, and do so in a way that does prevent the bycatch?
So the small species like sardines, mackerel, anchovies, those swim in those tight balls of that are just single species schools of fish. We've seen that on planet Earth or Blue Planet, and so when a fisherman finds that free swimming school of fish, it's the same purse seine method of encircling that whole school. Mm-hmm. And then tightening up the bottom of that curtain of net that's a circle. They tighten the bottom up, and now it's a big pouch, big purse, and they pull that to the boat, and then they braille with a big bucket. They dip, and they bring those fish aboard, put them into refrigerated seawater. I'm sorry?
Again, selectively, to your earlier point.
Well, it's selective in that they are targeting a full school of one species. However, there can be some other fish mixed in there, Mitch, like sure. Mackerel could be swimming with the sardines. Those are also taken, and they're retained and they're utilized so that again, there's no waste involved. It's a full retention fishery.
Now, the way you prepare your tuna is a little different than the traditional approach. You only have to cook yours once. How does that work? And what's the difference between the way that most canned tuna is prepared and the way that Wild Planet does it?
Right. Well, this is really the thing that has differentiated Wild Planet from most other brands. And it comes, I have to tell you the backstory, it comes from my Azorean Portuguese grandmother's kitchen. When I was young, we home canned our own albacore tuna just outside of Eureka, California. We would get 400 pounds of tuna from the boats, bring it, and the whole family was there cutting up the tuna, putting the fresh tuna with just sea salt into the mason jars and pressure cooking it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I knew to be canned tuna growing up. So when I got into the business in the 1990s, I realized that I could do that commercially and offer it to the public. So starting in 2000, I began selling pole and line caught albacore tuna in a can that was simply pure tuna cleaned from a raw defrosted fish. And the meat goes in the can with some salt, and the lid goes on, and then it's sterilized and has one cooking process. The conventional method pre-cooks the fish in big steam ovens, right, which makes them very easy to then cut and clean, because raw tuna is really hard to deal with. But that conventional method of pre-cooking and cleaning loses a lot of the moisture, the fats that drip out of the fish during the first cooking process. Mm-hmm. Then when they put it in the can, and it's machine packed, there's a problem. There's not enough liquid retained in the meat to resist burning and scorching and sticking to the sides of the can. So the canners put a liquid, water or oil, in the can to then protect it from that scorching. They put the lid on, and now they cook it in the same sterilization retort process that we do, but that's now being cooked a second time. And so you effectively have a baked tuna put in a pot of water and then cooked again in a pot of water, and then pull that out, and people say, okay, is there anything else we can do to get rid of this flavor? Whereas our product, all the flavor of the tuna is in that can because it was trapped in a one cook process.
You can really taste the difference and feel the difference in texture as a result. It was impressive. We're going to take just a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back with Bill Carvalho. We're back and talking with Bill Carvalho, founder and CEO of Wild Planet, about sustainable approaches to seafood harvest and the company's packaging. So let's talk about your packaging. You offer recyclable steel and aluminum cans with BPA-free liners. In other words, it doesn't have a particular source of contamination of food, but it's a plastic liner, and these cans are recyclable. You're moving away from using pouched food. Why is that?
Well, Mitch, we are trying to get away from compound packaging materials. Plastic is just a huge problem in the at-sea pollution. It's no secret that there's just too much plastic produced. These pouches were introduced some years ago because of our customers' demand, and we've chosen to start eliminating those one by one and replacing them with a single serve 3-ounce can with a peel top aluminum liner. So both the can, which is steel, the aluminum liner, which is aluminum, are both recyclable, and those are a product that we can feel very good that there's no plastic accumulation in the environment from them.
Well, that's great to hear that you moved past convenience to environmental responsibility. And since the cans made of metal or aluminum and steel can be recycled in the majority of curbside programs in the United States, have you thought about potentially doing any additional collection efforts to help people who don't have a curbside program available to them, which unfortunately is roughly 22% of the country?
Well, that's a great question. And that now you're going outside of my area of expertise, and I use that word a bit loosely. My concerns personally would be that a collection service in itself is a carbon-rich activity. I've seen some of these PET collection programs where you put 20 or 30 little plastic products in a box, and and they have a sticker to put on the box, and you send that, and the UPS picks that up and takes it somewhere. And I just really wonder how much overall carbon footprint effort there is in recycling 20 pieces of PET plastic. And in this case, Wild Planet's product is so easily recycled locally. We would certainly hope that there are local arrangements to do the recycling. I couldn't imagine having all that shipped to some central location.
You're absolutely right about the fact that it need not to be a long distance shipping problem, but for when you're recycling, but there are potentially drop-off programs that you could have even with a grocery partner. And if we can get enough material in a local economy that the processing can happen there is a real opportunity to start to make things circular. But not to debate your decision, I understand why you did it. Are you seeing the price of recycled aluminum rising because of competition from the beverage can industry and other industries that are looking at aluminum as a packaging substrate?
Well, we have certainly had price increases on aluminum. We've had it on steel. Mm-hmm. And then, Mitch, there's just incredible supply chain price increases on everything. So it's difficult for me to know what price increases tie to demand driven by a move to recycling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's talk then about the salads, because that's the new thing you're doing in the cans, and we tried them, and they really are delicious. My whole family enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Good.
Are building complete meals a key to expanding interest in sustainable seafood? Do we need to make these complete packaged meals more readily available?
Well, I think we do. We were learning from our customers that they would take our canned tuna and they were doing meal preparations that were very different than the historic traditional tuna sandwich, cream tuna tuna casserole, right? That's the historic use for canned tuna. Maybe they were taking those cans of this pristine steak in a can quality tuna and using them for new kinds of preparations. They would use them in niçoise salads and as a salad topper. And so we thought, if consumers like that kind of a fresh salad formulation with our tuna, we could give them the convenience of putting those together ourselves in a can. I talked to someone, a writer last week, who told me that she and her husband eat 100% from HelloFresh. So that tells me that convenience is pretty important for a lot of people. And so we are looking at expanding how many offerings we have of the complete meal salads.
Now, you also have the small fish products, which are potential replacement ingredients for tuna and salmon in a lot of things. Do you recommend replacing those things with small fish options?
I do, especially mackerel substitutes perfectly for tuna, because mackerel is in the tuna family and its meat has the similarities of texture and flavor as tuna. It's a little more difficult to replace salmon. There's just nothing quite like the flavor of salmon in the fish world. But we do encourage that, and the reason for that is because the ocean pyramid, the food chain, is this massive pyramid, and at the top of that pyramid are the predator species like tuna that are far fewer in number than the forage fish, these small fish that we might think as bait. Well, those fish are super abundant in comparison to the top predators. And so in the grocery store shelves, we see maybe 70% of all the canned seafood facings are two species, skipjack and albacore tuna. And there are so many more things to eat in the ocean than just two tuna species.
Have you thought about other kinds of seaborne foods? Have you thought about adding seaweed elements to products and so forth in order to better exploit the available resources?
Have you been reading my R&D notes, Mitch?
Yeah, we've hacked into the system.
You've hacked in. Well, that's really an excellent idea, and that is on our radar as well.
Oh, that's great to hear. Now, I want to talk a little about the state of the fisheries. You've been involved in this industry for a long time. How much do you think we need to put into restoring the oceans, and particularly letting some of these higher species on the food chain flourish? Do we have laws and the like that are driving in the right direction?
Well, there are things driving in the right direction when it comes to certain countries managing the fisheries within their EEZs, their exclusive economic zones, which is a 200-mile strip of water adjacent to their country. But once you get beyond the 200 miles, you have the wild, wild west when it comes to fishing. There is very little regulation, and people do as they wish. And when people can do as they wish, they usually wish to choose profit over reverence for the dynamic ocean environment. So there are organizations called RFMOs, Regional Fishery Management Organizations, and they're broken up into just a handful of them globally, and stakeholding countries that border those areas of ocean get together regularly and discuss how to manage the ocean resources. And that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to truly managing the overall species, especially those that are highly migratory, like tuna.
So what should our listeners be watching out for in discussions about preserving the fisheries? What are the top items on the list that matter?
Yeah, good question. It might be, the top issue may not be related to fishery practice at all.
Okay.
It may be related to the use of the most dangerous environmental damaging tool ever created by man, the fork. When I say that, what we put our forks into, it makes the most difference to the environment. I personally stopped eating very much beef at all. I don't choose to eat beef and other red meat like that because of the damaging effect of big agriculture feeding cows in these consolidated feedlots. And there's just devastation wreaked upon all the land masses of the world because of how we eat, and turning to mostly vegetarian diet, supplementing it with a little bit of land-based protein and lots of fish. It's the Mediterranean diet. It'll make you healthier, and two, it'll make the planet healthier. That to save the oceans from mankind's efforts is really more a factor of climate and the temperature of the water than it is trying to police the fishermen that are out there catching the fish. But
so would it be a good idea then to work with your fishing fleets to either electrify or switch to a low carbon fuel like ammonia?
Absolutely. That changeover would be very, very difficult. It will be very costly, and the funding for that would have to be found. But those fishermen also have the sun right above their heads all day long. So there's that. There's also the wind that blows hither and yon, and that could assist them. And I'm one of the directors of the American Fishermen Research Foundation, which is a West Coast tuna fisherman organization that funds research into the albacore fishery along the West Coast, and it funds research and public education. And one of the proposals that I made was to research the viability of alternative energy aboard the vessels. Okay, and the funding for that has not been found yet, but it's certainly on one of our lists.
Well, so given that we want to eat more seafood and do so sustainably, would it be a good idea for the federal government to create a subsidy program to help fishermen make that transition?
Of course. And that's really the level of funding that it takes to transform an industry from an industry that uses diesel to one that uses alternative energy.
So as you look ahead, say 25 years from now, what do you think the fishing industry is going to look like, and how will it have changed to ensure that we preserve our fisheries?
Well, I wish I could say that there will be more regulation, eliminating harmful practices, such as the use of fish aggregating devices. And you can go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch, and they have a great video that shows how a fish aggregating device works and why it is not eco-friendly. Okay. And I would love to say that consumers will demand a very high bar in what constitutes sustainable seafood, and thus consumers will drive a demand for change at sea. I would love to say that, Mitch, but if the history of the human race teaches us anything, it's that as long as profit can be made, then violation of all rights, human and animal, will occur. And it's very much a concern of mine that not enough of the public will care to make that change and to drive that change through their purchasing habits. Nevertheless, we continue on undaunted in trying to not just advocate for a sustainable practice, but to provide the actual products that people can select and choose so that they have an option to choose for a healthy environment and a healthy fisheries outlook 25 years from now, because there will be people living here 25 years from now. I hope my children and my grandchildren will be able to have access to the same seafood that I've enjoyed my whole life.
Well, that raises the question of consumer labeling. And I don't want to open a huge can of worms, but let me crack the top for just a sec. Are there labels that consumers can rely on today to help them identify sustainable seafood? And if not, what can we do about that?
Yeah, well, you know how it is. As soon as somebody leads the charge and does the right thing in a product claim, everyone else will jump on board, plagiarize that claim, and take all of its teeth out. So that's what I see happening. In 2000, we started selling pole and line tuna as the sustainable choice.
Right.
And the word sustainable wasn't even in use yet. But now everybody claims sustainable. It doesn't matter how they catch it, because there is no definition of what true sustainability is. And there are companies that have eco logo on package royalty schemes that allow you to buy a certain credibility by reaching a certain kind of a standard. But the standards of those eco logo companies are so much lower than they need to be to drive real change. So, Mitch, to me, the best recommendation you can get is from a third-party independent science board that operates within the Monterey Bay Aquarium called Seafood Watch. They don't sell their recommendations. They rank products, and they make recommendations even of brands that they have vetted and found to be more compliant with sustainable practice. And so consumers can go to them. And if a product is a can of canned tuna and it is 100% pole and line caught, that is the gold standard of sustainable practice.
And how do they rank Wild Planet?
Well, I hate to brag. Yes, Wild Planet is among a group of about 6 brands that they rank as the ones that they believe are meeting the highest standards of compliance. Greenpeace also ranks tuna brands, and they have since 2012. And Wild Planet has ranked number 1 with Greenpeace since 2012.
Well, how can our listeners follow along with what Wild Planet is doing and even collaborate with you to drive this change?
Well, we try to provide educational materials on our website. We participate in whatever opportunity like yours today, Mitch, in this excellent podcast. And thank you so much for the invitation and the interest. We try to be completely available to our consumers to listen to them.
Okay.
In fact, my email address is on our contact page. So any consumer can email me directly, and I read every email that I receive, and I answer many of them. Some of them are duplicates of what they sent to customer service, and customer service answers them, but I read all of them. And by reading what is on the minds of our customers, I've come to understand how we can be a much better company and position ourselves to lead the tuna industry and the seafood industry at large to much better compliance with earth-friendly practices.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with us today. It's been very interesting.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Mitch. Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Wild Planet Foods founder and CEO Bill Carvalho. So much of the oceans are still unexplored. And we have an opportunity to address this natural resource. And maybe the word phrase natural resource isn't the right one to describe our relationship with nature, but we have an opportunity to interact with this part of nature, which constitutes so much of our planet, the seas, in a new and better way. And perhaps we'll do it more deliberatively and with a positive impact. It's certainly encouraging to hear what Bill had to talk about with regard to Wild Planet's approach. We're also going to include in the podcast article, the article that goes with this podcast, a link to the Monterey Bay Aquarium's consumer guide, so you can find and download a copy that applies to where you are. They address different regions and in different languages. This is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear, and we're going to be back with another innovator interview. In the meantime, I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this podcast and one of all the other 310 or so that we've done with your friends and family, people that you work with. Let's get more ideas out there so that there is less waste. And based on what Bill said as we were getting off the phone after the interview, it sounds like there's going to be some new salads to choose from. We'll let you know when that happens. This is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. We'll be back. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again. But in the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.